Good evening, viewers. So we are here today again with Dr. Adityanjee. Dr. Adityanjee is President of Council of Strategic Affairs. So whenever we have a topic of strategic importance, we come to Dr. Adityanjee. So
Thank you, Hari Prakashji.
So we are going to discuss today about this India-Canada row and this Khalistan movement, and we are trying to dive into this issue actually. So where is the problem and what India should do about this? So we are going to discuss about this topic today in depth. So Dr. Adityanjee, the very first thing I would like to know from you, how does this Khalistan movement started? Because Sikhism is a very much a religion which has originated from Hinduism, and we see there is no difference between Hindus and Sikhs. But I think the past 20-30 years, people are hell-bent upon to creating divide between the Hindus and Sikhs. So I would like to understand from you what is the reason behind this, how this movement has started.
So as I was explaining earlier, that British policy of divide and rule was instrumental in trying to separate Hindus and Sikhs and create distances between the two communities. Prior to the independence, there was some suggestion by some elements from the Sikh community that just like Pakistan is going to be a separate Muslim state, there should be a separate Sikh state also, but ultimately that view did not prevail, and Sikhs joined, with India. In fact, they were expelled from Pakistan and they were persecuted and killed in Pakistan. So you had several trains from Pakistan full of dead bodies of Sikhs and Hindus, that kind of thing. In independent India, there was some demand from Sikh community for quote unquote a Punjabi Suba, because the united province of Punjab that time was a larger state, and Punjab and Pepsu, and the demographic was such that actually the Punjabi was not the dominant language, because current state of Haryana and part of Himachal Pradesh were part of that arrangement. So Sikh community went on agitation in early 60s demanding a Punjabi Suba, which meant bifurcation of Punjab into Punjab and Haryana. And I think it was on January 1st or January 11th in 1966 that the bifurcation happened under Indira Gandhi's government, and Punjabi Suba was granted. There were several leaders who went on fast into that, Darshan Singh Feruman, and there was a gentleman by name Man, both had gone on to fast into death. Once the Punjabi Suba was created, it was still not 100% Sikh, because Punjab has a joint polity, Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, and Muslims. When Punjab was bifurcated, Western Punjab went to Pakistan. Majority of the Muslims were in that part, but Hindus were either killed or they came to India as refugees. So Punjab was not a religious state, it was a linguistic state, and even today in Punjab there are only 58% Sikhs. But because of the dominance of the Akali Dal, successive governments that were formed, they were either Congress governments or Akali Dal supported by some other parties, in some cases Bharatiya Janasangh, and in other instances even communist parties supported Akali Dal. So those two polities were alternating. And it was the electoral demands that created more and more hardening of demands. Anandpur Sahib resolution came, which had separatist overtones. And around the same time, as I mentioned, that in 1971, when Bangladesh was created, Pakistan took upon itself to take the Khalistan project. And in that process, they, usurped the naive Sikh diaspora in UK, primarily at that time, and later on in Canada. So, they have been talking about separate Khalistan. The movement had died down after the late 80s in Indian side of Punjab, when the government went into Longowal Accord and rehabilitated the civilian government, and Akali Dal came back to power. Congress did play a dirty role by propping up Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, counterpoise to Akali Dal, and there was competitive demand for separation, Akali Dal versus Bhindranwale, supported by Congress party. So a Frankenstein's monster was created by Congress party because they wanted to be in the power. Also, what has happened that Akali Dal is not a unified party. There are several factions. When they are in power, they are fine, but when they are out of power, their demands become more and more shrill. So then the demands start for isolation, secession, those kind of activities one has seen that over a period of time. Even now there's a faction of Akali Dal headed by Simranjit Singh Mann, and he has been openly signing the asylum letters, charging money from Sikh peasantry. He charged them 50,000 rupees to sign a letter saying that they are facing persecution in India so that they can apply for asylum. These are called asylum letters. So that is how he is supporting his political base and his party's political expenditure. So there are a number of reasons, but bottom line is that at this point in time, this project has been hijacked by outsiders, foreign intelligence agencies, foreign establishments, both in Pakistan as well as in Western countries. And they are using this to subjugate India and, bring India down to the mat for whatever reason. Geopolitics is a very complex game. Your friends can be friends, but they can also be your enemies. They are still, trying to bring you down. So just be aware of that. And that is why the demand had died down, and then they brought this referendum 2020, which went nowhere. So they are having every year some kind of referendum in Canada or wherever for Khalistan. What does it mean? But yes, they do have support from Pakistan's ISI, which is funding them. Also, the funds are coming from drug running, Khalistani mafia, criminal activities, criminal enterprise, and some of the Western intelligence agencies that are covertly supporting them. Otherwise, you would not have brazen anti-India activities. You would not have brazen attacks on Indian consulates and embassies, whether it's in San Francisco or Toronto or in London, or for that matter in Australia. Those things have happened. Attacks on Hindu temples by Khalistani terrorists have been made, especially in Canada. We need to acknowledge that. We need to understand that is happening under the patronage of Canadian government. Threats have been openly given to Canadian Hindus by Ravant Singh and his clique that either you leave Canada or you join us in our agenda, that kind of thing. Either you are with us or you are against us, kind of thing. And they are terrorizing Canadian Hindus to the extent that Canadian opposition leaders had to come out in open and say that Canadian government should actually provide security to all its minorities, including Canadian Hindus, who are peace-loving people. So it has become a complex situation now, and the puppet masters will continue to pull the strings.
Because I see earlier Pakistan was focused on the Kashmir issue. So they were just initiating troubles in the Kashmir area. When the Kashmir issue has died down, and after this killing of the Bhindranwale and after Indira Gandhi and all that. So again, they are taking more interest in the Khalistani. So
Yes, they are, and they will continue to do that. So we have to understand their game, try to isolate them. It was no coincidence that in farmers' agitation in New Delhi, so-called farmers
yeah,
were supported by Khalistani elements and elements of GHQ and ISI. People sitting in Canada financing the agitation. Similarly, the Shaheen Bagh
yeah.
protests were supported by foreign elements who were providing funding. You know,
So actually, this is nothing about the Khalistan. This is only about breaking India. Actually, there is no Khalistan movement. Actually, they only want to create troubles for India so that the India power, India's rise in the global arena. Actually, that can be stopped. So that
you
is
are right. Since 1947, Western imperialists have tried to break India down. They were not satisfied with just partition of India and having a stronghold in Pakistan because they felt that Pakistan will, be more sympathetic to their imperial agenda. Physical colonization was perpetuated or replaced by colonization by any other means. So other means are being used to bring down India. Khalistan project is part of that.
So, what do you think Indian diaspora in Canada? How important is this for Canada actually?
Canada is a parliamentary democracy at this point in time, and Indian diaspora is a significant section of Canadian population. There are around 2.4% of Canadians are Hindus. So around 1 million people. And around 2.1% Canadian population is Sikh. They are around 770,000. Not all Sikhs are Khalistani supporters. Khalistani supporters are minuscule. But, like Trudeau is surviving on support from NDP, so he is aiding and abetting Khalistani agenda. So Indian diaspora in Canada is also helpful in a different way. And that has more to do with not just vote bank politics, but economy. There are 3.4 lakh Indian students in Canada. 3.4 lakhs. They bring more than $20 billion in revenue from India every year because their fees are paid by loans that are financed by Indian banks. So it's 40% of overseas students in Canada are of Indian origin. These Indian students leave, Canada will get a big jolt. Indians actually contribute a lot to Canadian economy by tourism. So it's a multifaceted, yes, there are trade relations, but besides trades, the students coming, the very large student community and tourism that helps Canadian economy. So Canada would be for a tough spot if they continue to take this anti-India line. Already Indian government has taken reciprocal measures.
Yeah.
And cancelled issuing visas to Canadian citizens.
Mm.
And they have also expelled the Canadian intelligence chief from India and have asked Canadian government to downsize their diplomatic missions or aka High Commission, strength of the diplomatic staff. And I think Trudeau will have second thoughts that his so-called smart move backfired on him, and he is going to come to regret his action.
As I discussed earlier, the geopolitics situation is very fast changing on the global platforms. So the Canada is the main business partner is America actually. And as far as I know, Canada doesn't have any gold reserve, the Canadian government. And so if its economy gets a jolt or something accidental happens, then the Canada will be in big trouble.
Well, Canadian economy is not in a good shape. And yes, they are part of the North American trading system. So they have a lot of support from United States. Canada is also part of G7 countries, and Canada is part of the Five Anglo-Saxon intelligence gathering alliance. So they get a lot of support. And all said and done, it's a large country with a small number of people. So they may not have gold, but they have other natural resources. There's land. So, but to antagonize a rising power like India is not in Canada's interest. And actually, opposition parties in Canada have capitalized on that particular issue, and they have castigated and thoroughly scorched Justin Trudeau. In fact, it is surprising. Canadian Parliament honored a 98-year-old Nazi Ukraine SSS escaped criminal who has been living in Canada detected or whatever in the parliament very recently when Zelensky, came to Canadian Parliament and was asked to give an address to Canadian Parliament. This guy was felicitated. And then a day after, the Jewish groups protested that this guy is a Nazi war criminal who escaped from Ukraine, and instead of being extradited to Russia or Soviet Union for prosecution, he escaped to Canada and has been living there. The Speaker of Canadian Parliament had to come and, say, oops, we shouldn't have done it because this guy is a, Nazi war criminal. So that speaks to you about quote unquote accuracy of Canadian intelligence, or for that matter, accuracy of the supposedly Five Eye intelligence conglomerate. To do a impulsive action just because you felt slighted in G20, summit in Canada, in New Delhi, you did not get any limelight and you were on the sidelines. Plane broke down and he had to park himself in India for 2 days. There was hardly attention given to him by Indian government. Justin Trudeau was a little miffed. And of course, there was no former bilateral, but there was a pull aside by Prime Minister Modi when he was given opportunity to talk to Indian Prime Minister, and Prime Minister Modi had apparently told him to work on the, terrorists, Khalistani terrorists that are thriving in Canada. So I think he probably did not like that, and this was his way of retaliating against India to give a statement in the parliament, but it is backfiring left, right, and center. Actually, on international stage, despite so-called solidarity of Five Eyes, nobody is willing to speak in favor of Canada at this point in time. Even United States has made some supportive noises, but they have not come out with any evidence. So if they are the ones who provided the intelligence to Canada, where is that intelligence?
Right.
Now, intelligence does not mean evidence, because we know what is the level of US intelligence. They claim that they had intelligence about Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction, and they, inflicted a genocidal war in Iraq in which almost 1 million Iraqi babies died because of the sanction. But there were no weapons of mass destruction, there were no nuclear arms, there were no biological labs, for chemical and biological warfare. So whenever you claim that we have intelligence, it does not mean that it is kind of credible intelligence. Even G7 partners like Japan, that are partners of Canada, are not willing to support Canada. So Canada is getting isolated internationally, and the only country that is having, glee at Canada's discomfort is China. Because remember, China and Canada had very bad relationships. China was sending its agent into Canada, and Canada had actually arrested chief financial officer of Huawei, Chinese company, Meng something, that lady, the daughter of the owner of the company, based on an American extradition request. And in that process, Canada burnt its fingers because after Meng's address, China arrested two of Canadian business persons for the same duration of time, and ultimately charges were dropped against Meng. She was allowed to go back to China. So China is laughing at Canada's discomfort at this point in time, and Canada has become isolated internationally. And Indian government has rightly characterized Canada as a country that is a safe haven or sanctuary for terrorists because they are harboring Khalistani terrorists. They had harbored actually some of the Tamil, separatist leaders and supported them. And Indian intelligence says that Canada had hand in assassination of Mujibur Rahman in Bangladesh. Whenever a country gives safe sanctuary to terrorists, it becomes a ground for action of terrorists. It has happened in Pakistan, it has happened in Afghanistan. These countries have been scorched to earth, and it is Canada's turn now. By becoming a safe sanctuary, ordinary Canadians would be the victims when the terrorists run around, run amok freely without any, control by the government law and order machinery. That ordinary mainstream Canadians will become the victims of this foolish action by a Canadian government.
Okay, sir, what do you think is the best way for the government of India to deal with Canada and the UK? Because they are providing safe haven to the terrorists, actually. Even you see so many scams happen in the India, and when the culprits run away, they will go to UK.
Yes.
The Indian government never ever be able to get the extradition done for these fugitives.
So ultimately, you can take a number of actions, you can issue statements and all, but in today's world, it's the economic sanctions that hurt. And I'll say about Canada, and the same thing can be generalized about UK, the government of India has to take a consistently strong action, which they have started. And what they have done so far is that they have given a very strong statement about Canada becoming a terror sanctuary like Pakistan and will meet the fate of Pakistan. They've already expelled the Canadian chief of intelligence station in New Delhi as a tit for tat expulsion, which is a good thing. They've already asked the Canadian government to downsize its diplomatic staff, and the Canadian government has started to do that. But what they should do is they should also, as a diplomatic displeasure, they should downgrade the level of relationship from High Commissioner level to charge d'affaires. So they should withdraw, recall Indian High Commissioner from Canada as a protest, and ask the Canadian High Commissioner in New Delhi to leave India, because that would be a diplomatic slap on the face. Indian government needs to reduce the number of consulates of Canada in India and introduce a system of reciprocity. India has only 3 consulates in Canada. These 3 consulates are in Ottawa, Toronto, and Vancouver. Canada has 6 or 7 consulates and 3 or 4 trade offices. So Canada has their main high commission in New Delhi, they have a consulate in Mumbai, one in Chandigarh, one in Bengaluru, one in Kolkata. And they have trade offices in Ahmedabad, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Kolkata. So they have every opportunity to infiltrate India and spread their spies and provide diplomatic support to Khalistani terrorists or other terrorists. And I think government of India should demand that the number of Canadian outfits, whether they are consulates or trade office, should be reduced to 3, just like India has in Canada. This must be implemented because the larger the size, the more military attaches or spies, intelligence people can be sent as diplomats. So we must have the principle of reciprocity. Already the bilateral FTA or CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, is on withhold, and it should remain on withhold for a period of time. In fact, Indian government should stop purchasing pulses. We buy lentils from Canada. So we should have more domestic production. We can do it. If we have the wherewithal, we have the will, we can do it. We can, we can be self-sufficient in lentils and pulses. So stop buying pulses from Canada. We can buy, if we have to buy, we can buy from maybe Argentina or wherever, but not from Canada. That will hurt the Canadian economy. There must be some economic sanctions symbolically on Canadian politicians and Canadian officials that we feel are working inimical to, either their visas should be curtailed or their, if there are any economic assets, there needs to be this thing. Indian government has already confiscated the properties and agricultural lands of Patwan Singh Pannu, and that should be done for all the terrorists that are absconding in both these countries or their supporters. Their OCI cards needs to be cancelled. They should not be allowed to visit India. Confiscation, if you have supported terror, yes, you cannot be allowed to visit India and you cannot have OCI cards. Because if you are fomenting criminal activities, you are not allowed to do that. Since Canada is supporting terrorist elements, India actually needs to make it a point to report Canada to the FATF, Financial Action Task Force. There are provisions for that. India has officially labeled Canada as an international terrorist sanctuary. But in the long run, economic boycott of Canadian products, curtailing the number of students will, hit the pocket. Same thing goes for UK. They are giving safe haven to Vijay Mallya and all these people, and then go behind the legal process. And even when the legal process is exhausted, they say there are special circumstances, something secret is going on. So we have to take very strong economic measures, and we can create some good universities in India, private universities in India, so that students don't have to go to, especially to UK and Canada, that are supporting terrorist elements against India. And there's one action that will be symbolic, but it will be again a diplomatic slap on the face of both these countries. There's no need for India to stay in British Commonwealth.
Yes, right.
Leave Commonwealth. we are not getting any benefit out of it. It perpetuates a colonial myth.
Yeah.
It perpetuates colonial hangover of these two countries.
Yeah.
You know, they are basically kind of an Anglo-Saxon club. In Commonwealth, it is UK, Canada, Australia, that are the dominant countries. So if India, quits Commonwealth, what's the need in 2023 for India to be part of Commonwealth? There are so many other groupings on international arena where we can put our point of view across. I think that will be a diplomatic slap on the face of UK as well as Canada if India were to leave Commonwealth. But mainly economic sanctions have to be taken, and that is in terms of tourism, trade, and students, because students take a lot of finances because they are full fee paying students. If you look at British universities, compared to the local students, the foreign students pay 4 times the fees. Can you imagine? And it's the Indian banks, because yes, Indians middle class has money, but they cannot actually pay everything in cash. So Indian banks are giving loans to Indian families to send their children abroad for education. And if we can just, provide similar level of education in India by encouraging private universities, growth of private universities, people will not have to go abroad.
Yes. Because today only I made one point in one of the WhatsApp group about this abroad studies. How many students are going abroad for their studies and they are paying exorbitant fees. And they go there, they do odd jobs just to support themselves. And what kind of education they are actually getting? Because I myself is a learning and development professional almost for 15 years. And I think if you cannot self-learn, then no degree, no matter from where you have got your degree, is going to. So I don't think the level of education is bad in India, and this foreign universities are teaching something very great, so that the people have to go there and pay this kind of fees actually.
It's a question of demand and capacity. The demand is high. We don't have capacity in domestic universities for various reasons. Historical reasons, the way they were only government supported universities, the tight hold of University Grants Commission, as well as limit on how private universities can come and all that sort of thing. We also have issue of lack of enough seats for the general category students. That is also a factor why people go abroad. Very tight competition. In fact, in one of the interviews in a couple of decades ago, I think Infosys chairperson, I think Narayan Murthy, in an interview with one of the American TV outlet, had stated that my son has gone to MIT, not because he is bright, but because he could not get into IITs. So I think we'll have to, in India, change our mindset. Education, university education is a big business in Western countries. And it's a brand or trademark. And they exploit that to the hilt. So there is actual transfer of economic resources from India. All these Anglo-Saxon countries where Indian students go, whether it is Canada, whether it is Australia, whether it is New Zealand, whether it is UK or United States. Let's be very sanguine. We will not be able to stop all the students from going abroad. But if we have a healthy university student, both in the state sector as well as in private sector, or in some ways, state, public-private partnership, we can create centers of excellence. Historically, India had centers of excellence, whether they were in Takshila, Nalanda. Why can't we regain that, strength by working hard and creating opportunities for higher education domestically so that Indian students don't go abroad for studies and do not waste the revenue that goes along with them to these countries. Only then these countries will realize the economic strength of India.
Because so far as the learning is concerned, you get a degree from a big university, they have a brand, that's all. So far as learning is concerned, if you don't learn, if you don't have the skills, so that no degree is going to help you in today's workplace actually.
Well, it's part of the old system, vestiges of colonialism where everything white was, everything with a white stamp, white approved stamp was great. That situation is changing. And I think in Bharat, we need to create universities. It's not all that difficult. We need to, just like we have established so many medical colleges, so many IITs, so many, All India Institute of Medical Sciences campuses. I think the focus should be on creating more and more privately and cooperatively funded universities, centers for excellence, where our students, can get higher education. Unfortunately, our education system is mired in the reservation politics. That is one of the biggest boost for students going abroad because they cannot get higher education locally. The seats are very limited, so that forces them to go abroad. That's a reality. We have to work on that challenge. And a stable government with long-term focus should try to close this loophole of continued Western imperialism and colonization of young Indian minds by sucking them into their own educational system.
So this is a very good topic for our next discussion, sir. We are left with no time.
Okay.
We'll be closing.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Hari Prakash ji, about Canada and Bharat Rao and what we can do about it.
Yeah.
And you always come with very, sharp questions in a very mild-mannered, smiling way. But I have enjoyed being on your show.
I am very proud to speak to you, sir, because I have a very few people of your caliber in my contacts. So we don't have any more time actually. So we are saying just good night to our viewers. We will be meeting again, and Dr. Adityanjee will be again on our show. We'll be discussing some new topic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Good night.
Enjoy it.
Good night.